Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to dive into Tesla.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, they're really shaking things up in how they approach innovation. And we've got a great source for this, Joe Justice, who actually spearheaded Agile development at Tesla.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he worked directly with Elon Musk. So this is going to be interesting.
It's so crazy how Tesla just throws out the rule book. It's not just little tweaks, it's a whole new way of running a company.
Yeah. And one of the things that really stood out to me was this Tesla anti-handbook. What is that? New hires only get 4 hours of training.
Right. Most companies, you're stuck in onboarding for weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
But at Tesla, they just throw you right in, working on real products from day one. But it's not just about speed, it's a whole different mindset.
So what's the philosophy behind this anti-handbook?
Well, it's really about personal responsibility. They have these super high standards. The assumption is that everyone's capable and ready to jump in and solve problems without needing constant supervision.
So it's kind of like sink or swim from the get-go.
Yeah, kinda. No hand-holding. You're expected to figure things out on your own. And here's the crazy part. The handbook actually tells people to go fix anything they see that's broken, even if it's not their official job.
Wow, so you could have software engineers unloading trucks or something.
Exactly. You'd never see that in a typical company where everyone's stuck in their own little department.
No, totally. And speaking of breaking down those walls, what about communication? Is it really true that anyone can just talk to Elon Musk?
That's what's so wild. Imagine having direct access to the CEO. That level of openness creates a culture where problems get solved so fast. It's not about hierarchy. It's about getting things done.
I see. So how do they actually organize all this? They've got these mobs, right?
Exactly. Mobs are these small teams that form organically to tackle specific challenges. They learn from each other super fast, and they're constantly bouncing ideas back and forth. It's all about collaboration. Everyone's actively involved.
So instead of individuals working on their own little piece, it's more like a team effort all the time.
Yeah. And that feeds directly into how they're able to innovate so rapidly. You know how most car companies take years to make even minor changes to a model? Yeah.
Tesla
makes changes daily, sometimes even multiple times a day.
Wait, hold on. How is that even possible?
Yeah.
Doesn't production freak out?
Right. It's crazy. Well, they do this by designing in modules. Think of it like building with Legos. Different teams can work on separate parts without messing up the whole structure.
So one team might be redesigning the seats while another is working on the battery all at the same time.
Exactly. And they can do this without stepping on each other's toes.
That's really smart. Okay, I'm starting to see how they move so fast.
It's wild. Joe Justice even gave this example where they completely changed the headlights, taillights, ND, the charging port.
Wow.
Oh, and that includes the software in just 2 WO days.
2 days.
2 WO days. No traditional car company could even dream of doing that.
No, absolutely not. That's amazing. So we've talked about the design side, but what about the money? Don't they need budgets to keep things on track?
Well, that's another area where Tesla completely throws out the old playbook. They don't do yearly budgets. It's all about real-time decisions based on what needs funding right now.
Wow.
They're constantly evaluating if they're spending smart and getting the most value.
So instead of waiting months for budget approvals, they can adapt to changes immediately.
Yes. And here's the kicker. They're actually using AI for this. It's called digital self-management.
What? So software that answers all your questions about project status, how much money is available.
Exactly. It even helps you make decisions.
So you don't need to go running to a manager to approve every little thing.
So the system just handles it.
Wow. So it's not just about saving time. It's about empowering people to be more effective.
You got it. And remember that AI auto bidder we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Joe said it's now being used to allocate budgets, optimize production, even guide design decisions. It's like they're building a company that can think for itself.
That's incredible. So with all this automation, where does Elon Musk actually fit in? Is he just like a figurehead?
Oh, no, not at all. Elon Musk is anything but your typical CEO. He's super hands-on. In fact, Joe mentioned seeing Musk sleeping on the factory floor in a sleeping bag.
He was sleeping on the factory floor.
Yeah. So he's not just giving orders from some fancy office. He's right there in the thick of it all the time.
Wow, that's wild.
Right. Musk's dedication is contagious. He participates in those mobs alongside everyone else, solving problems, learning, just like the rest of the team.
That's amazing. Talk about leading by example. And clearly, it's working. Tesla's pushing boundaries everywhere you look.
Absolutely. And what's even more impressive is this thing they have called the Justice Board.
Oh, I've heard of that. It's a giant whiteboard or something.
It is. It has every single Tesla project listed out, including the budgets and how they calculate the value of each one, all out in the open for anyone to see.
Wow. So total transparency. It's like everyone knows exactly what's going on and how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
Exactly. That's the whole point. They want people to be able to choose which projects they think they can make the biggest impact on based on their skills and interests.
So no one's stuck doing something they hate or they're not good at?
Nope. And it all ties back to this concept of open space technology.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I totally understand it. How does that fit in here?
Well, open space technology is basically a way of organizing meetings where people self-organize around topics they're passionate about. So in a way, Tesla has taken this principle and applied it to their entire company structure.
So it's like a giant ongoing open space meeting where everyone is constantly choosing how to best contribute.
Exactly. It's a radical departure from how most companies are structured, but it seems to be fueling their incredible growth and innovation. But here's the thing. If the designs are changing all the time, how do they actually manufacture anything?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That just seems like a logistical nightmare.
Right. How do you mass produce something that's constantly in flux?
I'm dying to know how they pull that off.
Well, that's where this thing called extreme manufacturing comes in. It's like a whole set of principles designed to keep production in sync with all those crazy design changes.
Okay, so extreme manufacturing. I like the sound of that. How does it actually work?
Well, one of the key things is what Joe called contract first design, then iterate the design. Basically, it means the design and production teams are like joined at the hip.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, constantly talking, constantly adjusting to each other.
So no more waiting for a final design to be like thrown over the wall.
Exactly. They're both iterating in real time. And get this, their suppliers are part of this too.
The suppliers, wow.
Yep, Joe mentioned that Bosch, their steering rack supplier, actually delivers updated parts every single week.
Wow.
And it's not just prototypes, these are actual production-ready parts.
So their whole supply chain is moving at warp speed.
You got it. And those big single-piece car parts, the gigacastings, they change the molds for those every 45 minutes.
Every 45 minutes.
You heard that right. It's like Tesla is constantly pushing the limits of what's possible, not just with the cars themselves, but with how they're actually made.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. So we've talked about the design, the manufacturing, but what about the people? What kind of person can actually thrive in this environment?
That's a great question. You would think it would be chaotic. You have to be so adaptable. You have to be super skilled to keep up.
Right, like is it a different type of worker they're looking for compared to traditional manufacturing?
Totally. It's more like the kind of people you'd find at a fast-paced startup. They have to be creative, resourceful, always willing to learn. It's not about following instructions. It's about taking ownership and driving innovation.
So it sounds like they're looking for more than just employees. They're looking for like passionate collaborators.
Yes. Exactly, and that really comes from the top. Joe mentioned that Elon actually encourages employees to have side hustles.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Even if they're working for competitors?
Yep.
Might sound crazy, but it actually aligns with Tesla's mission to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy.
I see. So it's not about beating the other car companies. It's about something much bigger.
Right. They're willing to share knowledge and even collaborate with rivals if it helps them achieve that goal.
That's really interesting. It sounds like a really different work environment than what most people are used to.
It is. And they have a lot of fun, too. Joe mentioned that the SpaceX employees built a tiki bar on top of one of their launch towers.
Wait, a tiki bar on a rocket launch tower?
Yeah. Just goes to show their playful, unconventional spirit. It's demanding work, for sure, but they also make sure to enjoy themselves.
So do you think other companies could actually replicate Tesla's success by adopting these principles?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Their approach is clearly very effective, but it requires such a fundamental shift in mindset and a very specific type of culture.
So it's not just about copying a few processes or throwing some AI at the problem. Nope, not at all. It's about creating a truly high-performance, self-managing system. It's about having the right people, fostering the right environment.
So is it sustainable in the long run, do you think?
That's something we'll definitely want to watch closely. They're still a relatively young company. But, even if they don't end up changing the whole world, they've already made a huge impact.
Yeah, they've shown that it's possible to break the mold, and to achieve incredible things by doing that.
For sure. And they've inspired a whole new generation of innovators to think differently about work and what's actually possible.
I think it's safe to say that their story is far from over.
Oh, definitely not. It'll be so fascinating to see what they do next.
Okay, so let's dive into some of the specifics that Joe Justice highlighted. I'm particularly interested in this whole digital self-management concept. How does that actually work in practice?
It's definitely something a lot of people are curious about. Software that can potentially replace managers. It sounds like something out of science fiction.
Right. So, like, what does that actually look like day to day?
It's not necessarily about completely getting rid of human managers, like Joe explained. It's more about automating those routine tasks and decisions that really bog things down in a typical company, like expense approvals, scheduling meetings, things like that.
So instead of going through all that bureaucracy, you can just get what you need instantly.
Exactly. And that frees up managers to focus on the bigger picture, like mentoring, guiding their teams instead of getting stuck in the weeds. It's like having a virtual assistant that handles all the busy work.
That's a great analogy. So it's not just about saving time, it's about empowering people to be more effective.
Precisely. And that AI, auto bidder, we talked about earlier, Joe Justice said it's now being used to do things like allocate budgets, optimize production, even guide design decisions.
It's wild to think about all the possibilities. But isn't there a risk in relying so heavily on AI? What if the data it's using is flawed or something?
You're right. That's a really good point. AI is only as good as the data it's trained on. So you have to have a really solid data infrastructure. And you have to understand your data, garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you think that's one of the reasons why Tesla's been successful with this? Like, their data analytics capabilities must be super advanced?
I would say that's a pretty safe bet. And it's definitely something other companies will need to think about if they want to go down this road. But even with the most sophisticated AI, we can't forget about human judgment, human intuition.
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to things like creativity, empathy, making ethical decisions. AI just can't replace humans entirely.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, right? AI can augment human capabilities, but it can't replicate that human element.
So it's really more of a partnership,
Yeah.
Humans and machines, each doing what they do best.
Working together to achieve those goals. That's what's so exciting about this whole thing. It really has the potential to unlock these incredible levels of innovation, productivity.
Yeah. But it also raises all these questions about what's the role of humans in a world where technology is becoming so sophisticated.
Yeah.
What does it mean for the future of work?
Yeah. Big questions that we all need to be thinking about as we navigate this landscape.
Speaking of new landscapes, let's talk about Tesla's approach to manufacturing. This extreme manufacturing thing sounds pretty intense.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's all about embracing change and adaptability, but to an extreme degree. We were talking about how they make design changes every single day.
Right. It's crazy.
Sometimes multiple times a day. And they have suppliers delivering new parts every week.
It boggles my mind how they managed to do that.
They've completely flipped the traditional manufacturing model on its head, right?
Yeah.
They've thrown out all those old ideas of long lead times, fixed schedules, these rigid hierarchies.
It's all about agility, being flexible.
Exactly. They've built a manufacturing process that's just as nimble and responsive as their design process. It's constantly adapting and evolving.
Right, because if your manufacturing can't keep up with the speed of your innovation, you're going to hit a wall.
Totally. And it comes down to a few key things. One of the most important is that contract first design thing we were talking about. It means the design and manufacturing teams are working together from the very beginning.
So no more silos.
Right. They're constantly collaborating, refining, adapting to each other's needs, and they're bringing their suppliers into that process too, like that Bosch example with those weekly steering rack updates.
Yeah, it's incredible how seamlessly it all seems to work.
It really is. But this kind of extreme manufacturing also has some really interesting implications for the workforce.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about. What kind of skills do you need to actually thrive in an environment like that?
Well, if designs are changing constantly, production is adjusting all the time, you need people who are highly skilled and very flexible. You need people who embrace change, who are quick learners, and who can really think on their feet.
So not your typical assembly line worker.
No, not at all. It's more like you need problem solvers, you need innovators, you need people who are comfortable taking initiative It's more like working in a high-growth startup than a traditional manufacturing plant.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that brings us back to Tesla's remarkable company culture.
It's the culture that allows them to do things so differently.
It really is, the culture that really encourages them to challenge the status quo, take risks, and never stop improving.
Yeah. But you can't just force that kind of culture, can you? What is it about Tesla that makes it work?
I think it takes a really special kind of leader to create and maintain that kind of environment. Someone who challenges conventions, pushes their team to be their best, and inspires them to achieve what seems impossible.
Sounds like Elon Musk.
Exactly. He's like the driving force behind it all. But he also trusts his team to make decisions and to take ownership.
So what would you say is the biggest takeaway from all this? What can other companies learn from Tesla's innovation secrets?
I think the key is understanding that true innovation often means rethinking everything. How we work, how we manage, how we lead.
Yeah. It's about being agile, empowering employees, and fostering that culture of continuous learning and improvement.
It's about breaking down the barriers between teams, encouraging that collaboration, trusting your people to make the right decisions.
And being willing to experiment, constantly improve, and adapt to change really quickly. It's not easy, but Tesla has shown that it's possible.
They've shown the world what can happen when you challenge the status quo and embrace a radically different approach.
It's almost like they've given us a glimpse into what the future of work could be.
Yeah. A future where technology helps people do their best work, where hierarchies are flattened, and where innovation is the driving force behind everything.
It's exciting and a little bit daunting at the same time, isn't it? But Tesla's story is far from over. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
For sure. But for now, let's circle back to something we touched on earlier. Remember the Justice Board. It's a perfect example of that radical transparency and empowerment that we've been talking about.
It's amazing to think that anyone, no matter what their role is, can walk up to that board and see all the projects, the budgets, how they measure success.
It's about making all that information accessible so that people can make informed decisions, see where their skills and their passions align, and then choose to contribute where they feel like they can make the biggest impact.
So instead of being assigned tasks, they're basically choosing their own adventure.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very different way of thinking about work, right? It's about attracting the people who are passionate about the mission and then giving them the freedom to contribute in really meaningful ways.
Makes you wonder if that's the key to unlocking even greater levels of innovation.
Definitely something worth thinking about. After all, the more engaged and empowered your people are, the more likely they are to come up with those creative solutions, drive real change.
It's almost like Tesla is running this giant experiment, right? To see how far you can push the boundaries of how we think about work.
And the results are pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, one last thing before we wrap up. This whole extreme manufacturing concept. It's fascinating, but it also seems incredibly challenging to actually put into practice. Like, how do you even begin to build a system that can adapt that quickly?
Well, it starts with building that foundation of collaboration and communication, right? Between every single team involved, design, engineering, manufacturing, even the suppliers.
So everyone's on the same page.
Everyone sharing information openly, working together to solve problems in real time.
No more silos, no more finger pointing, just everyone pulling in the same direction.
Exactly. And it also takes a deep understanding of your processes, right? And the ability to constantly analyze and optimize them. It's about finding those bottlenecks, streamlining workflows, and embracing automation wherever it makes sense.
So it's like a constant process of evolution and improvement.
Always evolving, always improving. There's no finish line.
Makes you wonder, if Tesla can achieve this by throwing out the old rule book, what's stopping other companies from doing the same?
Such a good question. And hopefully it'll spark some serious thinking out there for anyone listening. Maybe Tesla's approach won't work for every company, but that willingness to experiment, to challenge the way things have always been done, that's something we can all learn from.
Absolutely. So if you're feeling inspired to rethink your own approach, whether it's to work, to innovation, or even just to life in general, that's what this deep dive has been all about.
Keep challenging those assumptions, keep pushing those boundaries, and never stop exploring new possibilities. That's how real progress is made.
Until next time, keep innovating.
And keep diving deep.
See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.